Oh, hello. Always a pleasure to share your company. Come in out of the weather. Welcome back to the Gallery of Curiosities. I remain, as always, your humble host, All's Good. We have had some extremely busy weeks here at the gallery, first with Halloween and then with the homecoming crowds at the local university. I do so dread having to let go of the October mood. So, let's just carry on with it, shall we? Our exhibit for this evening is specially selected to ease our collective Halloween hangovers and comes to us by way of Mr. Michael Voss, a writer of weird tales and dark fiction. His work has appeared most recently in Cosmic Horror Monthly. He lives in Milwaukee, a very spooky city, with his wife and their rescue pup. Here for your listening pleasure is In the Black Chapel by Michael Voss, performed by the effervescent Ms. Laura Lee Bahr.
Windows open, and an imperfect silence settles over the quad. You crowd beside Claire and lean on the weathered sill of your narrow room, mirroring hundreds of students in 100 other rooms, all gazing down at the darkened commons. "Do you feel it?" she asks. And you want to say yes, thinking she means the spark that ignites as your hands brush together. But then you sense it, a low rumble resonating in the ground, like thunder rolling in the distance. Claire thrusts her arm into the sweltering night air and points to the sound source. The Black Chapel is growing a new spire. An old flèche calves off the structure in a cloud of atomized masonry. The roaring vibrations intensify, and your vision doubles. Underneath it all is Claire's laughter. She screams in delight as the new spire bursts upward through the tented roof with the sound of landslides fucking. The cheers subside, and silence settles over the quad once more. The only sounds you notice are a distant fire alarm and your own ragged breathing. The new spire, half the height of its closest sibling, shines wetly under the turquoise moonlight. How often does this happen? Hardly ever. Claire's eyes gleam through the darkness. Isn't it beautiful? It is, you think, and it takes real restraint to avoid comparing the chapel's terrible splendor to hers. She's tall, uncommonly so, with a chiseled, angular beauty and waves of black hair draped like midnight over her shoulders. She catches your glance, and you blush and turn your attention back to the chapel below. You count 7 spires in all, the newer ones catching the moonlight like glass, while the older, taller ones stand like shadowed sentinels against the Prussian blue sky. Do you think there's any real chance of getting inside? The next 2 years of study should end in the chapel with all its mysteries revealed. But you know how difficult the road is ahead for both of you. Only 2 of 20 students chosen for a program which has a graduation rate of 1 applicant every year. That's 2 years away. She shares a pouty smile and slides her fingers over the back of your hand. Even then, what makes you think the doors will open for you? Her tone is colder, more challenging. What makes you think they'll open for you? Your riposte is embarrassing, playground level at best. You put it down to sleep deprivation and change the subject to save face. Is it true what they say? If your roommate dies, you automatically get passing grades? Yes. And no. Claire returns to her bed and lays on top of the covers. If they die in a car wreck or kill themselves, you're exempt from exams as long as you audit your classes for the semester. But she props herself on her elbow, and you can feel her eyes pierce through the shadows. If you kill your roommate, you make the dean's list. You laugh at the absurdity of it, and are somewhat relieved to discover her sense of humor runs as black as your own. It's not until midterms that you find out how serious she is when she poisons your coffee with arsenic, and you collapse in agonizing pain in the middle of an exam. Your first week in the hospital is touch and go, but by the second week, you can swallow again and walk the length of your room without assistance. Claire visits you during the third week of your convalescence, textbooks in one arm and flowers in the other. What the hell are you doing here? Get the hell away from me! You recoil and look for something to defend yourself with. She sets the books down and lays the flowers on your bed. She raises her hands, palms up. I'm sorry, I botched the dosage. I never meant for this to happen. You mean you never meant for me to survive? Yes, Claire admits. And because of my mistake, you've fallen behind. She pushes the flowers aside and sits next to you on the bed, hands still raised. I've spoken to the dean and I explained what happened. She'll allow you to make up the exams you've missed. Sabotage is frowned upon, but murder isn't? You feel your face redden and your heartbeat echoing madly in your ears. Is this the part where I'm supposed to thank you? A look of regret clouds her face and is replaced by something you've never seen before. Humility. It's too quiet without you. Maybe, subconsciously, I need you around to spur my competitive side. Her eyes find the floor. Maybe I just need you around. Her guard falls as she loses herself in that last thought. So you punch her in the throat. She falls to the linoleum in a sprawl of books and flowers. Tears form in the corner of her eyes, and she rubs her neck tenderly. When she finds her voice, she rasps, I understand if you feel the need to retaliate. Let me get you through the midterms and see how you feel about me then. Claire sleeps in a chair in your hospital room for the next 3 days and runs through the coursework you've missed. Though you are loath to admit it, without her help, you would have dropped out, demoralized. As it is, you breeze through the exams, and by semester's end, the two of you are at the top of your class, with Claire taking honors. You hope the break gives Claire an opportunity to reflect on what she'd done, and, more importantly, what she'd said about needing to have you around. For all that's passed between the two of you, it's close to impossible to put her out of your mind. Claire's demeanor has indeed changed with the start of the new semester. She's less assertive, more withdrawn. She walks on eggshells around you, either conflicted in her feelings or, more likely, waiting for you to take revenge. You bury that depressing thought whenever it hovers close to the surface, by engrossing yourself in the deeper lore of the coursework. Whole days go by before you realize you've forgotten to eat. Formula you struggle with in the waking world are solved as you dream in songs of divination and the calculus of angels. As the spring semester rolls onward, several of your classmates drop out. One, quite literally by throwing himself off a bridge into a shallow river where he breaks both legs. The program is now down to 16 students, and your grade point average slides ahead of Claire's by 1/10 of a point. This infuriates her, so she tries to kill you a second time. One night, in late March, you stir from a sound sleep to find her kneeling on your shoulders, feeding death cap essence into your mouth with an eyedropper. Part of you wants to ask her why she continues to use poisons when more decisive methods are readily available. You are envious, really, at how casually she approaches killing. But you've had time to plan, and though your shoulders are pinned, your hands are free to reach down for the stiletto you've hidden under your mattress. The blade slips easily between her ribs, and she falls back with a sharp gasp. She inspects the wound with her hand, and when it comes back bloody, she shakes her head at you and looks stunned, hurt. She quickly dodges your second thrust and stumbles to her desk, scrabbling among her things and coming up with a penknife, which she sticks into the hollow of your throat. The mineral taste of blood creeps up the back of your tongue, and dark fractals bloom in the corners of your eyes. Before you lose consciousness, you plunge the stiletto under her collarbone. You don't know if it's Claire's screams or the sound of your body hitting the floor that spurs the resident assistant to break down your door, but the state she finds the two of you in becomes the talk of the campus for the rest of the school year. Once you both recover, you're hauled before a disciplinary committee chaired by the dean. The committee interviews Claire, and then you. Neither of you have seen or spoken to one another since that night, but you're forced to wait together in an antechamber for the board's final decision. You sit with your thoughts as Claire paces with hers. Unable to bear the awkward silence, she whispers to you, "2 more dropped out." "Who?" "Cassie and David." You recognize the names, both second years. "What happened?" "David disappeared. His roommate said he hadn't seen hide nor hair of him for the past 2 weeks. They found Cass wandering the commons in her robe, completely cataleptic. Or catatonic. Whichever." "Do you believe that about David?" Claire shapes her mouth into a delicate moo. "I think his roommate was more successful in his endeavors than I'll ever be. I mean, Jesus, who are you? Rasputin?" You find it hard not to return the smile. "What about you? You almost bled out, and here you are, strolling in front of that board like a badass doyen." Your fingers brush against your throat and dwell on the proud lips of your new scar. "If they kick me out, at least you gave me something to remember you by." "Same." She sits beside you and offers her hand, which you accept. A current passes between you, completing a circuit. After an anxious hour, you are called back into the chamber, and you stand before the board as your punishments are delivered. The committee presents you with a caged oiseau imaginaire and allows the both of you to remain in the program so long as you keep it alive. It takes the two of you a full day of scouring the school's library and your program's songbooks before you find any reference to the oiseau imaginaire. It takes another day to translate the page, and by that time, the creature has stopped singing, and its plaited feathers turn from lapis to amber. Claire, always better at interpreting dead languages, discovers that the creature feeds on the commingled blood of its keepers. You doubt her translation until you both open your thumbs over its alabaster feeding bowl and watch in amazement as its colors are restored as it drinks. You end the academic year on probation. The care and keeping of the oiseau imaginaire prevents either of you from going home during the summer break. And while you miss your friends, you don't miss the distractions of a busy campus. Access to the school's antiquities collection allows you to begin a draft of your thesis. You and Claire start sharing a bed. Claire begins to work on her thesis as well, and in July starts to undergo day-long sessions of ritual scarring in preparation. Because your thesis emphasizes hieromancy, you select a full-body tattoo depicting the life and death of Saint Sabine in grayscale. The story of the saint's life is intagliated in your flesh, from the nape of your neck to the tops of your feet, over a period of 5 weeks, which are alternately excruciating and ecstatic. September brings an extended heat wave and an influx of new and returning students. More of your classmates used the summer break as an excuse to reconsider their calling and dropped from the program. They would have never finished, Claire mutters as she reads the much diminished roster. You agree with her sneering assessment that they were lesser scholars who didn't have the will to see it through. There are 9 of you left. You take to wearing the carmine robes of the second-year adepts, sheer in places, to allow you and Claire to share, in part, the stories your modified skin tells the world. You've never been into clothes as a status symbol, but the robes fill you with pride, because you made them with your own hands, selecting the linen, tailoring it as prescribed, and dyeing it after crushing a kilogram of cochineal under a mortar and pestle. As the coursework intensifies, Claire begins to take large doses of cognizance to stay on task, and when she offers to share, you don't hesitate. The drug is effective, and soon you are diverting fully 1/2 of your weekly food budget to your cognizance dealer. By October, you've lost close to 20 pounds. The drug seems to have no effect on the oiseau imaginaire. Each day you open your veins to feed it, and soon it outgrows its cage. One night, Claire walks in on you practicing your song over the meditating form of Jeremy Harding. You protest that you are merely practicing the lesser harmonics of your thesis chant, and the resultant tendrils of ectoplasm were merely a side effect, evidence of the strength of your argument. She nods, and a single tear evaporates in the corner of her eye. I'll leave you to it. But please, clean up the mess when you're finished, and open a window. It smells like sex and desperation in here. She slams the door in her wake, rousing Jeremy from his trance. He looks dazed and asks drunkenly, Did it happen? I felt something, but don't really remember. It was good. Great even, you tell him, but don't have the heart to continue. You help him gather his things and guide him as he shuffles out the door. You stand under a scalding shower and scour the after effects of the experience from your body. Scrub the remnants of your song out of your hair. Claire returns well after midnight, and you wake to feel her in bed beside you. For the briefest moment, your heart catches in fear that she's making another determined attempt on your life for what you did with Jeremy. But she places a tender hand on your shoulder. I'm not mad, she says, speaking so softly that you must strain to hear her words. I just wish that you had warned me ahead of time. When I walked in on you, I just wasn't ready to see that. It didn't mean anything. You turn to face her. You reach under her shirt and run your fingers soothingly over the scarred pictographs etched into the small of her back. Your fingers linger there for a moment and dance slowly up her spine, reading the story etched into her flesh in a braille of colloids and hypertrophic scars. You used to practice with me, she says. I miss that time together. Oh, babe. You slide your free arm underneath her shoulder and pull her close. I've come so far with this. I wanted my final dissertation to be a surprise. She sighs, and a deep, shuddering sob racks her body. After you finish reconciling, you sing the harmonic for her. You fall asleep arm in arm, wrapped in the cool embrace of tendrils called forth by your song. The following morning, the remains of 2 students, charred beyond recognition, are found on a highway median just past the city limits. They are quickly identified as second-year candidates from your program. Colin Tunney and Jeremy Harding, the boy you'd sung to the night before. When you try to talk to Claire about it, she shrugs and says, and then there were 7. For the next half year, you and Claire ride a wave of months-long wakefulness, thanks to continual ingestion of cognizance. Days melt into one another, punctuated by translations of angelic languages, ongoing chants that refine your thesis, and the care and keeping of the oiseau imaginaire. When the day comes to deliver your dissertation, you and Claire stand side by side at your narrow window and release the creature into the wild. You imagine you can still hear the husk of its wings, even as it evaporates into the azure sky. You wrap one another in the saffron robes of master's candidates and walk with the 5 other remaining applicants in procession to the Black Chapel. Every student in the quad peers down at the dissertation ceremony from the safety of their rooms. You feel judgment in their eyes, and you know that most of them have started pools, betting extraordinary amounts of money on the outcome of today's thesis arguments. You want to run, but a reassuring glance from Claire is all it takes to refocus. You stand under a sky scorched white by an uncommon spring heat wave as the first candidate is called forth and admitted entrance into the chapel. An hour passes, and the next candidate is called. Another hour passes, and then the third is called. Neither of the prior candidates has returned from their dissertations, and you know what that must mean. The doors open a 4th time to admit the next candidate. The young woman stares into the void of the narthex. She looks at her partner, who shakes his head. They each turn their backs to the chapel and start to remove their robes. A chorus of abuse rains down from the students above. Claire turns to you. Once more, the self-confident, badass doyen. I know I got this, she tells you. I know you do. You brush a lock of hair from her eyes and give her a good luck kiss. She walks through the open doors and down the shadowed nave, disappearing when the heavy doors close. You've studied and practiced this day for 2 years, side by side with Claire. You know her thesis as well as your own, and you imagine walking beside her. The interior of the chapel will be wide, and the air filled with a fragrant dampness. You'll continue onward through the length of the nave, and your bare feet will pad softly against the onyx floor. The farther you go, the deeper the darkness will become. From the impossibly far altar, someone will pose the first question, and Claire will sing her response, and her hands will conjure the song into physical form. A faint light will illuminate the darkness. It's that light which she must reach to pass through the dissertation, unscathed. Claire will stop to admire her work. She will call forth more light with her song and thereby reveal more details of the Black Chapel, including statuary, icons, and the chapel's ever-descending teeth, still stained with the blood of the prior candidates. You hope she's able to sustain her song before it becomes a scream. When the chapel doors open again, they only do so to admit you. Tears sting your eyes and briefly turn the world into an abstract painting. You wish you'd sung your thesis for Claire while you still have the chance. You clear your throat and step forward, singing your argument's first harmonic.
That brings to mind my own alma mater. The competition was, as they say, cutthroat. We became most proficient at covert disposal of bodies. Ah, youth. This evening's reader was Laura Lee Bahr, the author of the novels Haunt, long-form religious porn, and the short story collection Angel Meat. Her short stories have been featured in over a dozen literary magazines and anthologies. She's also a lifelong performer, filmmaker, and literal tree hugger. More at lauraleebahr.com. And now the hour is late. Best not procrastinate writing that thesis any longer, lest you become academic collateral. Do come visit us next time at the Gallery of Curiosities. Gallery of Curiosities is produced under a Creative Commons International 4.0 non-commercial attribution, no derivatives license. Story copyrights remain with the authors. If you like the show, scry us on your favorite podcatcher and conjure a few stars or reviews for us. Those rating algorithms are singularly arcane. This episode was produced in November of 2024. For more information, visit us online at gallerycurious.com. Youth. I'll never forget the time that we locked that black goat into the dean's office. Seemed like a harmless little prank, but little did he know that Corazon, the dweller in the abyss, had been invoked into the ornery little beast. I'm glad we weren't there when he found that.